So here's a thought. Communism, capitalism, Christianity, what's the best system? I think the answer is it doesn't matter. And today, Rod Dreher is on with us, and he digs down into this concept. And he just, for a guy who is portrayed, he's a great writer. He's been writing his whole life. He's good at it. Not just good, he's sort of world class. And it's really interesting what he has to say about these ideas that he spent his whole life on. And today we get to talk to him. And he helped me with this idea. And if you're struggling with the politics of place, like, am I a capitalist and a Christian? I think this conversation helps a lot. Today, having things lightly, Rod Dreher. I'm going to do a little toast. Hey, Andrew's our editor. He got caught up, he married a Russian, lived in Russia, and then moved. Basically, he's in exile right now in Buenos Aires in Argentina, and he's our editor. So if you hear me talking to him, that's what I'm doing. Okay. Andrew, we have Rod's on, Rod Dreher. I'm going to do a quick toast because that's what we do because of all this weird stuff we do in the restaurant with Georgian. Have you been to Georgia, Rod?
No, I'm really eager to go. I'll
take you if you ever want to go.
I definitely want to go. When I usually get people here to Budapest, Americans who come over, I usually take them to a Georgian restaurant because, Americans have never really had that.
And that's right. So here's to your work and to giving thanks to all that we've been given. So Gagi Marjos, cheers in the Georgian traditions. Yeah. It's nice to have you. So how would you, so you've got this arc of writing, right? You're Live Not by Lies is out, which we'll talk about. How would you describe the telos? Like, what are you doing in your writing over all these? I mean, you're a movie critic, you're crunchy cons, you're a conservative icon on some level, producing words. Where are the words going? What do you think you're trying to say in the biggest picture?
That's a really great question that nobody's ever asked. Funnily enough, though, just before I came on this podcast, I was talking with a scientist. He's not a Christian. He was baptized Catholic, but he's now spiritual, but not religious. But I think he's on a path. And he reached out to me through a mutual friend because he's a neuroscientist, and he's been working on the problem of consciousness. And he's really, really worried about AI, artificial intelligence. And he's starting to come to the suspicion that there are spirits, disincarnate intelligences that are speaking through AI. And there's nobody he can talk to about this in the scientific community. And he can't find religious people to talk about it with any sort of understanding or nuance. So the reason I bring him up is because he asked me, he said, what should be our goal as public intellectuals? I said, wow, well, what I try to do is bear witness to the truth as best I can, knowing that I can never have the fullness of truth, always try to be humble enough to admit when I'm wrong, and I've been wrong before, and I will be wrong again. But, and I added that one thing I learned from talking to the dissidents, the Christians who suffered under communism, and some of them went to jail and were tortured by it, is that you prove your fidelity to the truth, and for us as Christians, to the truth of Jesus Christ, by being willing to suffer for it. Now, I've not had to suffer for the truth, but I told him that with this last book I've written, Living in Wonder, I lay it all out there about all the weird woo that I believe as an Orthodox Christian.
Okay.
And a lot of people will probably laugh at that and think, oh, we thought he was crazy. Now we know Dreher's crazy. But I told this guy, I said, I feel like, I'm 58 years old, right? And I look back at the course of my career and my life as a journalist. And what I've been trying to do is to bear witness to the truth as best I can. Now, that sounds so pompous, Solzhenitsyn really bore witness to the truth. I'm just a journalist who comments on the news. Nevertheless, the thing that I'm most concerned about in as a writer, as a Christian, as an intellectual, is the survival of Christianity in this post-Christian world, and in a world that's becoming anti-Christian and, in fact, anti-human. So that is my telos as a writer. I mean, I write before God. Not everything I write is godly. I admit that. I have a puerile sense of humor. But that's
me too.
Yeah, but that's what's guiding me, and I want to, and what I've tried to do too, John, to be honest, is trying to be humble enough to admit that I might not have all the answers. And for me, the two most formative experiences in my life as somebody who thinks and writes about the public, and also as a Christian, were two things that happened around the same time: the loss of my Catholic faith, and also how self-deceived I was by the Iraq War. I was in New York. I was a New Yorker on 9/11. I saw the South Tower fall with my own eyes. And in 2002, as we were building up to the Iraq War, man, I was so ready to go bomb the hell out of somebody, And I remember listening to people like Pat Buchanan, people on the right, who are like, hey, this is not a good idea. And I just ignored them because I was so full of patriotism and passion. And I only realized later, when I realized what a fool I had been, that all of my patriotism and my so-called conservative analysis, it was all a cover for vengeance. Muslims had done this to our country, so let's bomb some Muslims, even if they're not responsible for 9/11. And man, I'm so ashamed of that. But that taught me how emotions we can lie to ourselves, right? We can be driven by emotions and lie to ourselves about our own motives. And then, of course, losing my Catholic faith. I came to Christ as an adult through Catholicism. I converted when I was 26 years old, and it was a serious conversion. But I realized only in retrospect that my conversion was primarily intellectual. And I thought, when I started writing in 2002, when the sex abuse scandal first broke out of Boston, I told myself that as long as I had all of the arguments for the Catholic faith clear in my head and all the syllogisms clear, my faith would be fine. It would be hidden in a fortress, and none of what I learned would affect it. And I was wrong about that. 3 years later, man, I was just a complete spiritual wreck. My family was wrecked spiritually. We couldn't trust anybody. We started going to an Orthodox church, not intended to convert. We were living in Dallas then, but because as Catholics, we believed that the Orthodox had valid sacraments, right? And we knew we couldn't receive, but we wanted to be in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist and in a place where the worship was reverential and transcendent. And most of all, where we didn't have to feel so consumed with anger at what was happening in the Catholic Church. And after a few months, my wife said, you know what, you can go back if you want. I'm staying here. This is home. And I realized this is home for me too, because Orthodoxy is what I thought Catholicism was going to be when I became a Catholic. To finish the thought, though, I've been Orthodox for 19 years now, and I had to unlearn a lot of Western ways of thinking about the faith. Yeah. And it's been really good for me because there's lots of intellection in Orthodoxy if you want it. But for me, given the kind of man I was and the way my brain works, I needed to get out of my head. And Orthodoxy, talking about the conversion of the heart, that is what really has healed me. Go ahead.
I think you're speaking for so many men, but somehow, man, you're speaking for me right now. But Rod, it's so interesting because the sweetness in that narrative, that description of your conversion, it's so true, and it underlines everything that I know about the men who've become Orthodox. But it's funny, but somehow you get blamed for having a hard edge or something because of your conservatism. I don't understand that, because what you just described is the loving end of the love truth continuum that I think informs the truth. And I find the truth that you speak actually quite obvious, but so many people still hear it as a sword. And perhaps that's because we're too soft or something. I
don't know, man, because I stayed off of Orthodox online polemics because that was part of my downfall as a Catholic too, because, especially converts, we could be so passionate about the faith.
Right.
And I realized that this was part of my spiritual undoing as a Catholic, because I thought that, again, that as long as I had the right arguments in my head and I was willing to sally forth and defend the faith, that I was being a good Catholic, being a good Christian. And in fact, I was using my faith as a weapon, but not in a good way, And look, I'm a commentator. I'm a columnist. I do combat in public, and that's unavoidable. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it, but and some people the whole LGBT matter is something that really offends a lot of people, the way I write about this stuff, and I've defended it over the years. But I think that there's a false compassion in a lot of people. I've tried to write about LGBT. I've not always succeeded at this. I've tried to write about it with a sense of compassion, because my oldest friend in the world is a gay Christian. He's Catholic, and he's chaste, and he's carried a heavy, heavy cross. Mm-hmm. And so I know this well, but at the same time, we got to bear witness to the truth.
Yeah. Well, you're new. Well, there's Angel Studios, and you got together and made a film, yeah? So
yeah. Live Not by Lies. It's based on my 2020 best-selling book.
First of all, I got to see pretty much all of it. You sent me in advance links. Can I show the trailer on this pod? We don't have to, but
yeah, sure.
We can show the trailer.
I want people to know about it.
Excellent.
Warning, this historical program contains malinformation and wrong think.
How did people fall under the spell of leaders like Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot, and Mao? The short answer is the telling and believing of lies. And the solution to this mass delusion is precisely the opposite: the telling of the truth, no matter the cost.
Totalitarianism is a system of governance which seeks to control every aspect of your life. What you can know, what you can say, eventually what you can think.
You are outside here when you know you shouldn't.
We put someone on trial for praying inside their head.
Are you here to pray for the lives of unborn children?
If we got to that place already in 2023, where can we be in 10 years?
What we're seeing at the moment are tyrannical views that are emergent rather than controlled and distributed from the centre.
We're seeing books being cancelled, texts being changed. This is 1984, this is Brave New World.
If you eliminate or invalidate history, people lose direction and they will just do what Big Brother wants them to. And now we are heading there. We must wake up.
Solzhenitsyn told the West, you're losing your love of freedom and your willingness to stand up to lies.
This fear that anything could happen, it was always there.
I don't know if it was courage. If I didn't live like that, I would end up in an insane asylum.
There will always be people who will say what they see in spite of being told not to.
There's a battle for life going on. There's a battle for truth going on. Am I willing to say something about it, and am I willing to do something about it?
Мира и счастья всем вам, друзья мои.
Yeah, the book, the genesis of it was 2015. I was living in Louisiana then, and I got a call from a doctor in the Midwest, a cardiologist at the Mayo Clinic, who reached out to me through a mutual friend. And he said, I feel like I got to tell somebody what my mom just told me. His elderly mother lived with him and his wife, and she's a Catholic. And she had spent 6 years in a communist prison in Czechoslovakia, her homeland. The communists accused her and convicted her of being a Vatican spy. What made her a spy was she refused to stop going to Mass. And after she served her sentence, she got out and came to America. And there she was as an old woman telling her son, the things I see happening in this country, the United States right now at the start of the Great Awakening, reminds me of what things were like in Czechoslovakia when communism first came. And John, I thought, okay, fine, maybe so, but my mom is old. She sits at home. She watches a lot of cable news and gets freaked out. But when I would go out to conferences and meet people who had come to America from the Soviet bloc, I would just ask them, are the things you're seeing now with cancel culture and what we now call the Great Awakening, does it remind you of what you left behind? Every one of them said yes. And if you talk to them long enough, they would tell you how angry they were that Americans just wouldn't take them seriously.
Right.
So eventually I decided to write a book about that, Live Not by Lies. The first half of the book is analyzing the similarities and the differences between the hard totalitarianism that they fled in the Soviet Union and the Soviet bloc, and the emerging softer version of totalitarianism that they were seeing emerge in America.
Yeah.
And the second half, go ahead.
It's real interesting. In one of the excerpts, I forget the woman that you're interviewing, but she says, yeah, I get it. Everyone remembers, the camps and the torture and the executions, but you got to go look at the beginning when it's like a drug, when all the promises are like drugs. Mm-hmm. All the promises make us happy. And that's when she says, that's the part that you in the West have to study, because that's how you get into eventually to the gulag.
Sure.
And I think that resonated with me watching it, because I do like when people come up with big ideas to solve all the problems. Like, wow, what a smart guy. You are easily drawn into it. I think Israel's drawn into that right now. I think they have a plan to fix everything. I'm like, guys, what are you doing right now? This is a mess. And I like that part of the film. Are we in it? Or have we, did COVID maybe break some of these totalitarian patterns in a way where we can see clearer? Do you think that?
Well, it's interesting you bring COVID up, because the book was completely finished around the beginning of 2020, just at the beginning of COVID. And it came out in September of that year. Between finishing the book and its release, we had COVID. And we also had the summer of Floyd, the George Floyd killing, and then the hysterical overreaction by so many institutions where suddenly, everything was racist. And I questioned the George Floyd narrative on my blog and lost one of my best friends who said I was a racist just for questioning the narrative. And the book got zero attention from the mainstream media, but it sold over 200,000 copies, mostly by word of mouth, because finally there were so many Christians and others, not all the readers were Christians, who said, this is explaining what's happening in our country. And I think COVID did reveal a lot. It was an apocalypse in a way, because it showed how many people were willing to conform, to do whatever the government said, to yield to experts, and so on and so forth. I remember, John, during COVID, we started seeing a rising number of young people coming to our Orthodox parish there in Louisiana, most of them coming out of evangelical parishes. And we said, we're glad to see you, but what brings you here? It turns out that COVID scared the hell out of them. And it made them realize that everything that they thought of as normal in American life could fall apart just like that.
Yes.
And they wanted a church. They knew that the churches they were going to, the mega churches, did not give them the spiritual grounding and seriousness that they needed to hold on to the faith.
Yes. Can I ask you a hard question?
Yeah.
This is a hard question. And let's just try it. So philosophically, I think, or let's say theologically, let's talk about theos, like God. I think God, since COVID, has become a different conversation in America. A much more, you can invite people into this conversation. We say it in the restaurant, like regular people are willing to talk about sort of these big theological ideas. But with that has come also a new way of understanding the American narrative. I'm going to call it the conservative narrative, which, capitalism is good and overseas wars allow for us to be free and da-da-da. So everything's being questioned. So here's my hard question for you. Everything's being questioned, including the practical nuts and bolts of like what happened. For instance, was COVID actually manufactured? Was 9/11 actually manufactured, right? The Libyan war, all this stuff is now being questioned at its core. Like I'm talking about like in a scientific way, like that building didn't come down properly, building 7. I get drawn into that. I'm wondering this. Do you think those things, let's just do COVID, 9/11, are they actually not what we think they are, like in their entirety, or do you just not mess around in that lane? What do you
I don't
think?
really go into that lane, to be honest. I mean, the 9/11 narrative, I haven't gone down those holes, but the way I see it, 9/11 is at a not as deep a level as you're going. I see it as this whole idea that America is innocent, we were attacked. That's how I used to see it at the beginning. And I've learned, especially living overseas. I live in Hungary. I've been in Hungary for 4 years.
That's right.
You get a really different view on America. And I say this as a conservative and as someone who thinks of himself as a patriot. Get a different view on the way America affects the rest of the world once you're outside it. And on COVID, of course, it was a lab leak. And now was it manufactured for the purpose of infecting people? I don't see the evidence to support that. But at this point, anything is possible.
I know. That's right. That's the weird part, is it's possible, which really is almost more important than what actually happened. Is everyone's in a new way of investigating in that sense. So I get nervous about it, but I actually think it's part of the breakdown towards something like a better way of life. But I think it could get pretty ugly. St. Paisios says it's going to get ugly before it gets better.
I was recently at a conference in London, and there were people around the table, some liberal, some conservative. And they asked us each, as a way of introducing ourselves, to talk about the books that have meant the most to you, been most formative to you and your intellectual stance. And it was weird. I thought about the books that meant the most to me. Alistair McIntyre's book, After Virtue, a philosophical text from 1982. The work of Zygmunt Bauman, a Marxist sociologist who coined the term and the concept of liquid modernity. And Philip Rieff, who wrote The Triumph of the Therapeutic in 1966. All of these are men of the left, not liberals, real leftists.
Yeah.
But I think they saw things about the way American society and Western society and capitalist society works that a lot of us people, like I used to be a right-wing liberal, which is what most conservative neocons are in America, right-wing liberals.
Yeah.
Those guys woke me up to the way certain things work. And in particular, the way that capitalism, and look, I support capitalism. I don't think socialism is a viable alternative. However, Marx was right to talk about the way capitalism destroys traditions, destroys everything that's settled. And, and I realize now what fools people like me once were to think that we can have a settled Christian tradition and also have, unrestrained free market capitalism. It doesn't work.
No, there's some subsidiary. There's another way that's emerging. And I'm with you. Socialism, it doesn't work. You know who taught me a lot this is going to sound weird, but Malian Muslims, West African Muslims in the country of Mali when I was being formed up as a young man in Peace Corps. Everything I had been taught about the American narrative, it didn't work there. They kept being kind to me. I watched an economy work, but people didn't get rich, but people ate enough and slept enough and had enough. It broke me in the way I understood the West. It didn't make me dislike the West. I was happy when I came home. I kept doing that work all around the world, but I was thankful that it like protected me against that one narrative, you know, that super patriotic narrative that's a bit of bullshit. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from that simple way of life. However, you know, I don't like a mud hut. So then you got to find a way to balance wealth. And I don't know. How do you see all that? Have we fallen for a greed culture without knowing it? Are we greedy in a way that we don't even know about it in some ways?
I had this Catholic friend, she's since passed, but she called the Democrats a party of lust and the Republicans a party of greed. And the two are two sides of the same coin, you know? I mean, you realize that in the 60s, you know, we had the sexual revolution, and it went hand in hand with capitalism, because what capitalism does is it tries to sell us things, right? And the best way to sell people things is to detach them from any commitments that would cause them to restrain their passions, restrain their desires. And so you can see that how, you know, the expressive individualism that came out of the 1960s that has captured people on the right and on the left, how it goes hand in hand with social liberalism. And it would be very, very hard. I mean, look, a lot of people are saying now with the new Pope Leo XIV, you know, that he chose the name Leo in honor, he said this, of Leo XIII, who wrote this great encyclical in the 1890s about social justice, right? And it's a powerful encyclical because he was talking about unrestrained capitalism and how that contradicts core Christian teachings. And he did this because he wanted to fight socialism. He was a Catholic, and you know, he thought socialism was a false promise. But he also knew that, you know, capitalism had to be reformed. Anyway, so a lot of people are saying maybe this new pope will have something to say about that, about how we live today. The thing is, it doesn't really matter what the pope says.
That there's something to that, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, because we have become so detached from any sovereignty, any authority that's not ourselves.
That's right.
You know, most American Catholics are basically Protestant. And it might well be true of us Orthodox.
Guys, take a break with me. Consider Art of Tamada in Greenville at the restaurant. Full weekend of fun, October 24, 25. Or come to Florida, Intimate Affair. We only sell 30 tickets. Guest speakers just about to be announced, but I have some ideas. That's November 6, 7, 8, 9. Both of them support our work. Both of them include music and toasting and the art of the tamada. In Greenville, it's all about the restaurant. And in order to do such things, we need your support. Listen to my daughter, who I've co-opted to do such a thing as start a store that allows you to do this.
It's finally warming up. The sun is out, the air is crisp. Spring must be any day now. Overwhelmed with that one closet full of junk? Have you almost been eaten by your clutter? It's time to finally go through those boxes and storage you've been neglecting. You'll be surprised what you find. Instead of throwing out these used items, you can donate them to us, First Things Foundation, for 5 easy steps. We partnered with eBay Charity to list your items for 100% donation when purchased through our storefront. First, find the items you wish to donate. Step 2, take 2 to 5 pictures of your item. Step 3, email me, Nico Heers, at first-things.org. This is where you can include as much information about the selected item as possible, including the year you originally bought it, worth, product type, damage if any, and size. Don't forget to attach those pictures you took earlier. Once you've sent the email, you can sit back and relax. We'll list your item for you and be in communication with any possible buyers. Once it's purchased, we'll follow up with an email and prepaid shipping label for you to attach and send your item off. Step 5. Package it up, attach the label, and drop off at your local post office. With those easy steps, you've not only cleaned out your closet, but you've contributed in assisting local visionaries in their quest for a better life.
So what do we do about this, Rod? You're a historian. You can see the arc. I studied history. This is sort of what the podcast is about. When I back up the American experience, it backs up into the revolutions, the French Revolution, the Soviet, the Bolshevik Revolution is a part and parcel of these new world revolutions, including our own. And then you back up a little further, you get to Locke and you get to the rational, Enlightenment philosophers. And as an Orthodox, I don't identify with that burgeoning moment. And it's not like I read those guys and go, yeah, this is the answer. And so I'm becoming less and less of an American, let's say, nationalist, perhaps.
Yeah.
What do we do with that?
Oh, man, that's a great question. It's something I think about a lot. My friend Patrick Deneen a few years ago published a great book called Why Liberalism Failed. And his argument is that liberalism failed because it succeeded, meaning that the point of liberalism starting with Locke is to empower the individual and the choosing individual. Well, we've gotten to the end of that, and we have created a almost completely atomized society full of choosing individuals who recognize no authority other than their sovereign selves.
Yeah.
You can't have a society that way. That it doesn't work. And so what are we going to do about that? Well, some Catholics believe in what they call integralism, which is a fusion of church and state. That'll never fly in America. And even if it did, Catholics are a minority in America. And 99 out of every 100 Catholics would refuse to put themselves under any sort of authority, political authority of the church. And when I hear them and some of the Christian nationalists, a lot of them are Reformed Protestants, but, what place would Orthodox Christians like you and me have in their world? We wouldn't have one. So America is a pluralistic society. That's just a description, you know, and I don't know where we go.
I know. It's okay not to know, though.
No, but this is why I talk about the Benedict option as a political solution. By politics, I mean in the broadest sense for how we relate to society, right? And I think that the most sensible thing that all of us Christians can do at this point, in this time, in this place, the West, the United States, is to focus on building up small communities, starting with the family, the church, and spreading out, and reform ourselves, because we have to repent of our own radical individualism. It's in all of us, because if you're raised in America, it's there.
Yeah.
And we need to repent of that and then to sort of figure out where to go from there. But I'm hugely suspicious of grand programs to if we just elect this person or if we follow this ideology, then that's going to solve everything. No, it's not. It has to start with repentance.
I honor you, and you have a platform. Keep saying that, Rod, because so many guys I know fell for the next election. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
And I think, one little bugaboo, we do this overseas thing. I talk to a lot of young men. White nationalism is a weird thing, man. First of all, I'm not sure white's a thing. And I find that voice, when it seeps into our Orthodox Christian narrative, is a really dangerous voice.
I could not agree more, man.
Good.
I was just back in the U.S. to do some promotional work for the Live Not by Lies film. And it shocked me to talk to Christian academics I know talking about how so many of the young white guys in their classes have become anti-Semites. you know?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about criticizing the Israeli government. That's one thing. I'm talking about hating Jews as Jews.
Right.
And they're getting it all from online. And I got to say, more than 20 years ago in my writing, when we first started hearing about racial identity politics on the left, I would write things like, you guys, if you go this way, you people on the left, you are calling up the demon of white racial politics too.
Yep.
And I grew up in a part of the country, small town, South Louisiana. I was born 3 years after the Civil Rights Act passed. The memory of segregation and the Ku Klux Klan and all of that was very real. We do not want to go there. But the left just kept banging on about it. And now we find that young white men are sick of being demonized. But the answer is not to repeat the errors of the left.
No, it's a cross. The answer is to accept the cross. I hear so many guys like, well, I'm angry because now I can't get jobs. And I'm like, yeah, just take the cross, man, because the alternative is just to not be a Christian, because the alternative, the white narrative it's not a Christian narrative.
No,
it doesn't
work.
It doesn't work.
You know, the most profound thing in my mind that Alexander Solzhenitsyn said was what he learned from the Gulag, which is that the line between good and evil does not pass between political parties, or you might say between races or any social group. It passes right down the middle of every human heart.
Yeah.
And that is a profoundly Christian thing.
How does anybody reject that stuff? I don't know how it's so beautiful. We just have to keep writing about it. I mean, it's boring, but Dostoevsky captured me, and that guy has never left. The narrative of Crime and Punishment is really the narrative of what's going on right now, right? Guy has all answers. Just let him do all the answers, and then old lady dies by axe handle. It's like, that's what's going to happen when we think we have all the answers. And
and look, this is what totalitarianism, this is how it comes about.
That's right.
In the book and in the film, we talk about what Hannah Arendt said in her 1951 book, The Origins of Totalitarianism. She, after the end of the war, she wanted to find out what it was about the social conditions in Germany and Russia that caused those countries to surrender to Nazism and communism. And she found that the most important factor in the coming of totalitarianism is mass atomization and loneliness. And dude, we have that to an incredible degree now. And there are other factors too, like transgression for the sake of transgression.
Interesting.
And people wanting...
just breaking, like that impulse to break stuff.
Yeah, just break stuff. And she said that there's a great quote of hers. She said that there were people willing to tear down the pillars of their civilization just for the fun of watching people who had been excluded come in, right? And man, that's the left started it, and our side will do it too. I say our side. I mean, I guess you're conservative, but
I'm Orthodox, so I can't.
Right.
But there is a narrative I'm trying to reject within American conservatism. But yeah, I think we're conservatives. We're trying to conserve the culture of Christ on some level, right? I mean,
right. Yeah, I call myself I'm not a Republican. I'm an independent. I usually vote Republican because we have to live in the real world.
Yeah,
I do not believe in political quietism. We have to stay involved, if only to protect religious liberty. There are other important things too, but religious liberty is the number one thing for me. So we have to stay involved. I voted for Trump. Don't like Trump. Don't really trust Trump. But I didn't feel that there was any real alternative. And I didn't want to be the kind of guy who I was in 2016, who just didn't vote, didn't want to dirty my hands. I was never going to vote for Hillary Clinton, but didn't want to vote for Trump. And I'm grateful for a lot of the things Trump has accomplished this term. But, when I was in Nashville, after a screening of Live Not by Lies, somebody in the audience said, well, do you think wokeness is over? Because now President Trump is in, and he's passing all these executive orders, repealing wokeness and blah, blah, blah. I said, well, wokeness may or may not be over. I don't want to say it's over because it got so deep in the American elites and in American institutions. But the danger of totalitarianism is still there because the conditions that give rise to it, especially the mass loneliness, and also one thing Arendt said was people who gave up willingness to search for the truth and they accepted as true what felt true, right? Mm-hmm. And this is something that the mass loneliness is still with us. The desire of people to believe, to take their emotions as sufficient to establish truth, the transgression, it's all part of our culture now. Yep. Now, I don't want to live in a right-wing totalitarianism any more than I want to live in a left-wing one. So this is something we all have to be very, very concerned about and to go deeper into Christ. You know,
can I end with some? I don't want to end. We can keep going, but can we do something fun for a second here on that note? Oh
man, I'd love it. Yeah.
Okay, good. I've got a cool little quiz I'll give you. We call it the Lightometer quiz. It has to do with how old world or new world you are. We do it. It's fun. I'm going to call it up here in a second. All right. But before I do, we saw each other at ARC, and a fun thing, and you spoke, you were on stage. So I'll ask you what you thought about ARC real quick, but really, I was with all those ortho artist guys, like Martin Shaw was there. You were there too. What I liked about ARC is hanging with those guys. There was a lightness. Everything was so serious, we're going to save the West. How do you stay light? Like, how do you stay laughing in this life of?
Because I'm fundamentally a ridiculous person, John. Honestly, for me, I love telling stories. I love people who have a sense of humor. If you don't have a sense of humor, don't sit by me. And I really am repelled by people, people who might agree with me on theological or political matters, who don't have a sense of humor. Because I think part of this comes from growing up in the Deep South. I had this uncle, he passed away in the 80s. Uncle Murphy, and he was a total joker. He back in the 70s, early 70s, he was playing cards with a guy, and one of the guys he was playing with was an undertaker, and the guy couldn't pay his gambling bill. So he said to my uncle, "How about if I make a tombstone for you? Well, that settled the bill." My uncle said, "Sure." He wrote his epitaph on a bar napkin, gave it to the guy. A few months later, guy calls, says the tombstone is ready. My uncle sent his teenage sons up to pick it up. He held his own wake in Louisiana because he said, "I'm not going to be here to enjoy it. I might as well enjoy it now." That he ceremonially put the tombstone by his front door. And he would go out at night. He drank a lot of bourbon. He would go out at night and pee on his own tombstone. And I can remember as a little kid going to his house for Christmas and seeing the tombstone. It said Murphy Andrew Dreher Jr., born 1932, no death date, and then the epitaph. But when he died, his kid said, of course, Dad would want us to put this tombstone on his grave. So if you go to this little country cemetery and visit his grave, you see the epitaph, "This ain't bad once you get used to it." And I love that. And Murphy was the one who gave me the first edition of the book, A Confederacy of Dunces.
Oh, I know that book.
Yeah. Oh, good Lord. That is the fifth gospel. And in fact, let me step up here. I got to get something to show you. Hang on. I'll be
do
right
it.
back.
Do it. Definitely.
You're going to love this. Hold on. I had a friend of mine who's an artist who did a 3D printing of Ignatius Riley, the anti-hero of Confederacy of Dunces. Right.
You printed that for you.
Yeah, the Atlantic magazine. I've got Ignatius and I've got Dante. Those are my guys. So
wait, that's a proper continuum. I love it.
There you go. Sense. So this guy's doing a profile of me for the Atlantic magazine right now. And I said, the New Yorker profiled me a few years ago. I said, what nobody who's profiled me has ever understood is that I am Ignatius Riley. I'm existing in violent revolt against the modern world. But the difference is Ignatius was deadly serious, and
yes,
I'm not serious.
Well, also you have this weird safety net called orthodoxy, which you can't, it catches you in the end. You know, that's what happened with me. I want to destroy everything. I want to take it all down in humor and fun. And then I have to remember my sins.
Oh, sure. And look, I got to tell you, man, growing up in the town that I did, you know, I don't know whether this was just my town or whether it's the American South or what, but there is a high tolerance for eccentricity. And there was my uncle. And, you know, I remember when I was living in Philadelphia in 2011, getting ready to move back to my hometown after my sister died, I was having lunch with a friend who said, aren't you worried that leaving Philly for a town of 2,000 on the Mississippi River, you're going to miss the diversity? I said, we have our own town drag queen who rents a car and goes in the town Christmas parade every year. And this, I kid you not, this drag queen, this was before drag became a thing. He was just an eccentric. Nobody in this town is liberal, or maybe there's a handful of liberals, but everybody tolerates an eccentric. This guy, he was a young black guy whose mother had been born there and came home to die, and he came with her. He would do, there's a haunted house, a famous haunted house in my hometown, the Myrtle's Plantation. It always turns up on the History Channel of most haunted places in America.
Yeah.
This guy was a maitre d' at the restaurant in the haunted house. And he would do drag fundraising concerts to buy homeopathic veterinary care for abandoned animals.
Okay. You can't make this up.
No, you can't. But this is real. This was the South. And
that's Louisiana.
Everybody knew he was crazy, but they didn't care. He was nice to old ladies, and
but he was doing fundraisers in a conservative town with drag. See, this is what I'm saying. There's a way to do this, to balance all of it out of love. I love that, man.
Yeah, and it was that's just the town, and you know, and I love that. And you know, I left the town after. I mean, it was really bad. I wrote about all this in my book, The Little Way of Ruthie Lemming. Ruthie Lemming was my late sister, and you know, she was a really saintly person in most ways. And seeing she and I were two very different people. You know, there were just the two of us. I couldn't wait to get out. She couldn't wait to get back. After she finished college, she moved back, married her high school sweetheart, and taught in the local school. She started a family. I started a family in New York and the Dallas, and that was that. But when she was diagnosed with terminal cancer in 2010, I was living in Philly, and I was able to observe from a distance and going home as often as I could, talking to them every day. I observed the beauty of a small town and how all of these people came to help her because she had taught most of their kids, right? And they couldn't stop the cancer, but they helped her bear it, carry that cross. And I remember going to the funeral at the family church. They were Methodist. And the line for the wake stretched down the street in the rain and around the block. And my wife and I decided we need this for ourselves and we need this for our kids. So we moved down there. We get down there, though, and they won't accept us because we were different. Yeah. And the tradition, my parents and my sister's kids, they all had the tradition that Rod left here. He became not like us, 100% like us, even though I was a conservative like them. I'm a Christian like them. I wasn't like them. And they said, it was like the prodigal son story if it had ended with the father taking the side of the
other son.
Right. Now, I hadn't been a prodigal. I'd actually succeeded in the world, but in their minds, I was a prodigal, and they weren't going to change. And
so that's too. Those are lines drawn too strong, too bold.
Exactly. Yeah. My other family, my cousins and all them, they were Murphy's kids. They all accepted us, but my folks and my sister's kids couldn't because my sister had raised them to never trust Uncle Rod because he's a city guy. And I fell ill. I had mono for 3 years because of all that anxiety. And it ended up leading to the breakup of my marriage. And it was just awful. But the lesson there, I mean, sometimes people say, how can you love your family after the way they treated you? I said, because this is a mystery. They really were good people. They were the best people.
Well, you just described them as good just 30 seconds ago.
They were. But here's the thing, John. They were so they worship tradition. They're the family tradition, right? And the fact that I didn't fit into that tradition perfectly meant that they had to reject me. And I say that not to crack on them, but just to say I learned a big lesson there that in the end, you've got to be, even if you're a traditional person, and I try to be, you've got to make room for love and you've got to be flexible.
Wow.
You know? And
this is a very important lesson, Rod, for all of us, but also in this little Orthodox world that we have in America. It's a great thing to remember. All right, you want to do this quiz with me? It's fun.
Yeah, let's do it.
I promise. It ends, look at this. It ends with me actually analyzing you. Are you ready? Okay. So it's going to get a little scary. So here we go. You're answering using numbers. So 0 is you strongly disagree. 0 is like, I reject that mostly. And 3 is I strongly agree. 1 is I disagree. 2 is I agree. So I'll help you. I'm going to ask the question now. This is called the lightometer test. It's very important.
It's 0 to 3, right?
0 to 3, 0 being strongly disagree, 3 being strongly agree.
Okay.
And this is like born. This is hatched in like the bowels of MIT. It's totally correct. This will define your life. So I'm sorry to put this on you, but everything you've ever wondered,
man. We all trust expertise.
Expertise. Bravo. Here we go. This is important now. Let's just see where Rod Dreher stands, guys, as a human. When you die, Rod, you won't really die all the way. You can feel the science in this, right? When you die, you won't really die all the way. It's more like you'll be asleep, sort of waiting for a next world of some sort. 0, like, no. 1, maybe. 2, I agree. 3, strongly agree.
Is this a question asking about, do I believe in heaven or the afterlife?
See, there's types of people in this that take this test, Rod. You're a challenger of the question.
Well, no, I don't want to be difficult, John. But I
think so. I think
I believe that I will fall asleep and that the resurrection will come one day. So I guess I'll say 3.
3. You see, I fought you because this is already hewn from perfection. We can't really question the test, right? Right.
What did I just tell you about sticking to tradition? You got to be flexible. Economia, brother.
I got to pay attention. All right, here's your next question. I want the world to, we're revealing you to the whole world. Here it is. Question 2. The best way for you to get to know yourself, Rod, is to ask someone else about you. In other words, the best way or for me to know myself is to ask someone else about me.
That's a great question. I think 2.
2. Oh, look at that. Right to the number. Because the numbers are really what matters, right?
No, of course.
All right. 2. Here's your third question. So far, so good. When I carry a picture, again, I is you. When I carry a picture of someone I love in my purse or wallet, I am actually carrying that person around with me, like they're there somehow close to me.
3 is the utmost.
3 is strongly agree.
Yeah, strongly agree. Iconography, brother.
Ah, look. Guys, he might be pretty old world on this. Question 4. Respect isn't earned. Respect is owed by me to others.
3.
I'm with you on that, by the way. I'll tell you my number in a minute. And the last question. Your life's going to change. Here we go. I'll say it in the first person. I hope and expect to take my parents in and have them live with me when they get old and affirmed, or depending on your life perspective, where you are, I expect to live near my kids, even preferably in their home when I get old and infirmed.
Well, given my difficult relation with my parents, I'm going to have to say one. But ideally, before things broke down in my family, I would have said 3, but I'm going to say 1 because, yeah.
I get it. Rod, I did the math. I don't know if you could hear the whirring of the computer, but you've come up as a 12. So
what does that mean?
Here we go. This is where you can wear this proudly. Jonathan Pajot's taken this test. A lot of people have taken this test, and here's what's going to happen now. I'm going to turn and sorry. This is the highlight of our tech here at Heavy Things Lightly.
All right.
You're not the high nooner. That would have been 2 to 4. That would be shining down like a halo from a perfectly engineered drone. Science illuminates your every move. That's not you.
No, it ain't me.
You probably know exactly how the drone works too. This is not you. This is not you. You didn't win the Francis Bacon Award.
Thank God.
That would be, you might be the actual reincarnation of the father of New World Science. That's not you. You're not the shining city dweller on the hill. You have hope for the modern world because you trust spreadsheets and Reddit. That's not you.
Nope.
But here you are. You're a villager.
Okay.
There's a good chance you hate malls.
Oh, I hate malls.
Yes, exactly. No one in your family likes your Spotify collection because it's weird.
That's so true. No, can I stop you right there for a second? My father used to give me so much crap when I was a teenager in a good-natured way. He would say, I'm a kid of the 80s, right? He'd say, what the hell's a talking head? Say, Thompson twins, there's 3 of them. Yeah.
First of all,
I identify.
I had a hernia operation yesterday, and I think I just blew a suture.
Oh,
That's actually a true story. I'll finish with your very important. This could change your life, right? You always eat the one menu item that makes people nervous at the restaurant. That's you.
That's true.
You
raw oysters. That's
right.
That's a sign that God loves us and wants us to be happy.
The oysters. You obey pedestrian traffic lights. You obey pedestrian traffic lights incessantly. You are told you look and act just like your aging father, but somehow that's a weird compliment. And outhouses make you happy.
All right, I'm not for outhouses. I tell you, I visited Paul Kingsnorth and his family in the west of Ireland when I was.
Wait, I did that in February.
Did you? Cool. Did you use the toilet there? The composting?
Yeah, the outhouse.
Dude, no, I didn't. I couldn't bring myself to do it. All right, I peed off the back porch of his office.
Paul, you catching this?
Yeah, because hey, you know what? That's my people. That's how all men from the rural South like to go pee off the porch.
Too often. My wife gets so mad at me, but I'm like,
oh no,
look,
women hate it. Women hate it. But Paul,
wait, did you stay in Paul's little back writing office?
Yeah, I did. It was a great space, but nope. I just held it for the 2 days I was there. I'm admitting this now to you because there is a limit to how crunchy I am. The Crunchy Con is not fully crunchy.
You're making my day because I run this thing where we do this crazy work in Africa in mud huts, and I lived in them, but guess what, Rod? Not anymore. I'm happy when the air conditioning turns on, and I'm very happy. So,
John Heers, I am an avid indoorsman, and I grew up in South Louisiana, where outside for most of the year it's so hot and it's so humid, and that's where the mosquitoes and the alligators and the snakes and the Sasquatches are. Now, nobody's ever seen a Sasquatch in South Louisiana, but that's just because they're so good at hiding themselves.
That's right.
I'm basically Woody Allen about South Louisiana woods.
I love it. We'll have coffee. We'll have a drink together then, because I'm with you. I forget about that. I'll talk about it, and it informs me. Like, it's important, but no, I'm out. Give me New York City. I want to retire and just go down to the coffee shop. I tell my wife, let's just get a teeny little place when we get old, and we just walk down, get a coffee, watch the world, and then walk back up, and eventually they'll bury us at a monastery upstate somewhere.
Brother, this is my life here in Budapest. I'm talking to you from my apartment. I live in the old part of the city, on the top floor of an old building. I go down. When I finish with you here in a few minutes, I'm going to meet a friend at the neighborhood pub. They put tables out, and going to drink wine and just talk and watch the world go by. There are 5 coffee shops within a 6-minute walk of my apartment. This is living.
I'm jealous. I'm getting there though. I'm jealous. All right. This has been wonderful. I'm so thankful. It's really nice to have such a light as you on our podcast. It helps. And I thank you, man. Big time.
Oh, man, it's been a pleasure. And I really like the fact that we didn't fall into maximum heaviosity. We got to be silly here.
Can I use that? Maximum heaviosity.
Maximum heaviosity. Mia, Ignatius and I approve of you.
Okay, good. We'll count ourselves. Well, we met once. So let's count ourselves friends, by the way. And Ignatius, that's the next conversation we have. That sounds fantastic. But great. All right, keep writing, brother. Be at peace, and find us if you come to the South Carolina ever. Okay, because
I will do. Hey, man, that's where my people are from. The first Dreher came in 1745.
Oh, so you're one of the meaner sorts.
Oh, yeah. But you know, the one who got, I think the son of the founder, the grandson of the founder, got kicked out because he was a weirdo. And he went where all weirdos go, Louisiana. That's how we got established there.
Good point.
I'm not making that up.
No, that sounds correct. In the South, that's the hierarchy. South Carolina is weird, but Louisiana is off the charts. I agree.
Oh, yeah. And we're proud of it.
Well, you have Stephen DeYoung down there too. Another weirdo. He's the best.
There you go.
All right. Well, I'll see you later, and thank God. And little by little, and guys, see the film. We'll link it all, Rod.
Sure.
And
sure.
We'll use the trailer to we'll cut it in. But
yeah, and people can see it on angel.com streaming. It's in 4 episodes, and I got to tell you, stick with it through the 4th episode, because the 4th episode leaves me in tears all the time. Because I mean, I don't cry at sad things; I cry at beautiful things, and the nobility of these Christians and what they suffered, and the lesson they have for us today is overwhelming.
Well, I wanted to say this: it's true, guys. You have to, but. My favorite guy in the whole world is Obi, the Romanian who works with the orphanage. Oh my gosh, the beauty in this character, the beauty in his being it made me want to sing like The Angel Cried. The angel. I was like, this is this man. Like, this is this man. I was thank you. So
they're
good.
all like that. And look, they have something that we need. The artist, the photographer, filmmaker at the very end, the Slovak guy, Timo Kriška, he was a toddler when communism ended, and he had the freedom to travel. He practice his art, to make money that his parents and grandparents never had, but something was missing. And when he went to find these elderly people in his own country, some of whom had gone to prison, they had a peace that passed his understanding, and they changed him, and they will change people who encounter them in the film. I show it to your kids, folks, because kids who were raised today after communism in our country, we don't tell them anything about.
Yeah, no, it's just blank. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's important. And it's important now, and it's going to be more important in the future, I'm afraid.
All right, brother. Guys, Rod Dreher, thanks for coming. I appreciate it. Okay, so Rod is essentially a villager. He's moving. He almost turned out to be a sovereign, the sovereign. Full retro. You know, you think the Enlightenment is what happens when you open your eyes after a long nap. He was almost Rod's old world, man. What a delightful conversation. I don't know. The interwebs are weird. Some days I'm like, this is the dumbest thing and a waste of my time. And if I scroll one more, my head's gonna explode. Wait, or maybe my entrails. Maybe I'm actually poisoning my soul, the inner parts of me, not just my head. Isn't it weird how we think of our head as separate from... This is the Enlightenment did this to us. Your head is not separate. Your head is an entrail. It's not doing anything special. It's doing what the rest of the body is doing all the time. It's just keeping you alive. It's your soul, though, that is life. And why did I just launch into a sermon? You can turn it off. If you just hit click right now, you'd be like, yeah, thank God. Click that guy off. Over. Thanks for spending all the time to get Rod Dreher so I can listen to him, but for you, bro, that's fine. I don't care. You can also donate. You can hate me, but you should donate. Actually, you should donate. You should donate your cargo. There's an advertisement we just played in the middle of that conversation. Donate your cargo. Donate your life by becoming a First Things Foundation field worker. It's happening. How about this? Let's not use the word donate. Let's do this. Offer your time and help me organize one of these cool fundraisers. Come to the restaurant. Eat food. That's a donation. Be a Tamada. We got ways to be a Tamada, both out in Seattle with Supra Dinner Society being run by a guy named Daniel Paternos. But also, you can come to the restaurant in Greenville, make a pilgrimage. Of course, here's what the thing is. I love that place so much, I talk it up all the time, and then you're going to come here and go, it's rather small. It really wasn't what I thought it was. By the way, that's possible, because it's just small and awesome, and also delicious. And a big table tonight. Yeah. Can't wait. Juno, one of our field workers, is coming back. He's bringing his girlfriend. Bam! That guy... Yeah, he did good work in Guatemala. Anyway, you should be a part of this world by becoming a donor. And also, when I have time, we get together and we talk as donors directly, especially if you're a recurring donor, we hop on a phone call, which I need to do very soon. Much love to all you guys. That is the outro. Don't cut any of it, Andrew. It's a yada yada moment. Forgive me. Bye-bye.